Blackout Challenge. The Blackout Challenge has existed long before social media. The goal in this challenge is to achieve a brief high that comes from cutting off oxygen to the brain by intentionally suffocating until you lose consciousness. However, while many assume that blacking out from lack of oxygen is perfectly safe in the long run, that couldn't be further from the truth. The rewarding high in this challenge is in reality a dangerous form of cerebral hypoxia where brain cells are deprived of vital oxygen. This can lead to seizures and hemorrhages. Even if someone survives the challenge seemingly unharmed, depriving the brain of oxygen for just a minute can cause permanent, irreversible damage. This can affect memory, reasoning, and other critical cognitive functions in the long run. The line between a fleeting dangerous thrill and irreversible tragedy is terrifyingly thin, and once consciousness is lost, there is no way to control the outcome. Not to mention the very real risk of the person never waking up again. Unfortunately, many who try to recreate this challenge are completely unaware of these dangers, resulting in 82 people losing their lives between 1995 and 2007 alone. What makes this even worse is that almost all of these deaths were between the ages of 6 and 19. Much like other viral trends, young impressionable kids are especially drawn in, motivated by peer pressure or the need for validation, online or in real life. Which is why the resurgence of the Blackout Challenge through social media platforms like TikTok brought it to an even younger audience and left a devastating trail of victims. One of the most well-known cases is that of Nyla Anderson, a 10-year-old girl from Pennsylvania. Her family found her unconscious on the bedroom floor on the night of December 7, 2021. They rushed her to the nearby hospital. Unfortunately, it was already too late. After barely clinging to life for 5 days, she tragically passed away without ever waking up. No one knew why she would do something like this, until investigators did a forensic analysis of her phone, which revealed she had been viewing videos of the challenge on TikTok. Another tragic instance happened in April 2022 when a 12-year-old boy from the United Kingdom named Archie Battersby suffered catastrophic brain damage after attempting the challenge and passed away months later. And these weren't isolated incidents either. Numerous other children, some as young as 8, suffered a similar fate or other life-altering injuries after attempting this challenge. Sadly, despite social media sites' best efforts to suppress the challenge, it continues to spread to this day. Car surfing. Car surfing, or riding on the outside of a car as if it were a surfboard, has existed as a trend long before modern social media was even a thing. It started gaining popularity in the early 1990s, compelling teenagers and young adults to speed down the highway while precariously balancing themselves on top. Today, most modern cars don't have much to hang on to on the outside to improve aerodynamics, which makes this already high-risk activity even more deadly. It only takes one small slip for even the most daring car surfer to fall into the road. Something that's evident from a 2008 CDC report, which revealed that 58 people lost their lives while engaging in car surfing, and 41 others were severely injured since 1990. Unfortunately, the rise of social media and the desire to go viral with outrageous stunts have only driven that number higher ever since. Most recently, in May 2023, a 16-year-old boy tragically lost his life while car surfing out the back window of a car when the vehicle lost control and rolled over. He would have almost certainly kept his life if he were in his seat with a seatbelt. Sadly, the car surfing trend is just as alive today as it was 3 decades ago, and shows no signs of fading away anytime soon. Happy slapping. On the 21st of January 2005, the Tez magazine in the UK reported on a new trend spreading rapidly across the country, something they referred to as happy slapping. Contrary to its name, however, the trend was anything but happy. In essence, it involved people, often young adults or teenagers, going up to a random person, slapping them, recording their shocked reaction, and then sharing that video with others. Personal camcorders and phones with cameras were becoming a lot more accessible during this time, allowing the attackers to record their crime and share it as something funny. These happy slapping videos were shared all over the internet for the whole world to see. As for how this trend initially started, some reports from the time linked them to violent TV shows like Jackass and Dirty Sanchez. A big difference between these shows and the happy slapping videos, however, was that everyone on TV consented to enduring the pain on camera. The people filming happy slapping videos, on the other hand, usually targeted complete strangers and bystanders for what they perceived as social clout. As the media expert from that time explained it, what we see the kids watching these shows doing is thinking, well, maybe I could stage my own scenes of pain and humiliation along these lines. Then with happy slapping, people are drawn in as random victims rather than the kind of voluntary performances we get in the shows that are being copied. I think happy slapping has become a shortcut in the eyes of the slappers to fame and notoriety among the people who see the images circulated on the web or sent to them via their mobile phones. And while that was already bad enough on its own, things quickly took an even darker turn. As time went on, the recordings became increasingly violent, likely in an effort to outdo one another and stand out in the sea of dozens, if not hundreds of similar videos. Things went from humiliating but physically harmless slaps to coordinated attacks resulting in permanent injuries. One of the worst cases of this happened on August 31st, 2009 in South London. A 67-year-old retired care worker named Ekram Haq left the mosque on Church Lane in Tooting, England after the evening prayer, where he was then approached by two boys, 15-year-old Hamza Lazai and 16-year-old Leon Elcock, wanting to make a happy slapping video. Things quickly spiraled out of control as neither of them held back, resulting in Ekram passing away a week later from a severe head injury he received during the incident. The two were eventually identified and arrested after police reviewed CCTV footage from a nearby camera. Both pled guilty to manslaughter, with Leon receiving a 4.5-year sentence and Hamza sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. The happy slapping trend as a whole eventually faded away after the UK and the surrounding countries started treating it as a significant threat to public safety, with France even criminalizing it and giving it a punishment of up to 5 years in prison. Angel of Death Challenge. On June 3, 2022, an 18-year-old teen tragically passed away after falling in front of a truck in Tangerang, Indonesia. However, what made this particular incident stand out among the dozens of traffic-related deaths on Indonesian roads every day was that this was not an accident. Instead, this was the result of one of the most disturbing internet trends that was sweeping the country during this time. It had actually started back in 2021, but exploded in popularity in mid-2022. The trend was called the Malaikat Maut Challenge, or the Angel of Death Challenge in English. It involved TikTokers, mainly teenagers, playing a game with oncoming traffic, particularly loaded trucks. Their goal was to run out onto a busy street in front of a truck, hope it stops before hitting them without flinching, and post the video of the stunt online. But completing this dangerous challenge successfully was a lot harder than many of its unfortunate participants realized. Most of them jumped onto the road as the truck got extremely close, giving the driver virtually no time to notice them and apply the brakes. But even when drivers had enough time to see the kids performing these stunts, they still couldn't slow down in time to prevent tragedy. Trucks usually carry heavy cargo, and that weight doesn't stop on a dime. The heavier the load, the longer the braking distance, sometimes stretching dozens of meters even after the brakes are fully pressed. So by the time the drivers reacted, it was already too late. Not to mention the fact that this trend was also putting the truck drivers at risk, both physically and psychologically. For one of these cases, involving a 14-year-old participating in this challenge, the driver fled the scene, likely out of fear of facing criminal charges. If he had instead stopped and cooperated, the footage the teenager's friends captured for TikTok would have proven his innocence. But by running away, he turned himself into a hit-and-run suspect, potentially jeopardizing his job and even his freedom depending on the charges he received. Following the incident in Tangerang, Indonesian police acted quickly to prevent further tragedies. They managed to stop 14 more kids from attempting the same dangerous stunt that very day and continued to monitor the city over the upcoming months. However, the attempts in Tangerang, Indonesia were only a small part of the global trend that cost several lives and left many others with life-altering injuries over the next year. Thankfully, TikTok eventually stepped in and removed all content related to the Angel of Death challenge. And since social media validation was the main reason participants took part in this dangerous trend, the platform's ban caused it to gradually fade into obscurity. Kia Challenge. Near the end of 2020 and throughout 2021, authorities in Milwaukee, Wisconsin noticed a significant increase in car theft. What made this even stranger was the fact that the majority of these stolen vehicles were either from Kia or Hyundai, with theft of these particular cars doubling or even tripling in some areas compared to previous years. However, before investigators could determine the cause of this surge, the situation spiraled beyond their control in ways they could have never expected. Put simply, stealing Kia and Hyundai cars became an internet trend called the Kia Challenge. It began on July 12, 2022, when a video captioned "Kia Boys" went viral for demonstrating just how easy it was to steal Kia and Hyundai cars manufactured between 2011 and 2021. All a thief needed was a screwdriver and any regular USB cable, since the connector just so happened to be the perfect size and shape to jumpstart the vehicle. This was a major hardware-level security flaw in dozens of car models, and there was no permanent way to fix the problem either. Now, the original Kia Boys video was eventually taken down by TikTok, but the information was already out there and it already sparked the Kia challenge. Teenagers across the US started breaking into Kias and Hyundais and posting their stunts on social media to participate in the challenge. While the stolen cars caused a massive financial burden for hundreds of innocent residents, the real danger of the Kia challenge came from what many of the thieves did once they had taken control of the vehicles. Since many of them had no intention of actually profiting off the stolen cars and were only doing it for the internet, they began taking the cars for reckless joyrides around town, putting their lives and the lives of everyone else on the road in extreme danger. One of these joyrides led to a police chase, which eventually ended with the out-of-control car slamming into the concrete barrier and the teenagers who stole the car trying to flee on foot. The most disturbing of these incidents occurred in Buffalo, New York in October 2022, where a stolen Kia ride ended in a fatal crash, taking the lives of 4 teenagers. In total, the Kia challenge resulted in the loss of 8 lives before the disturbing trend was shut down by TikTok and other social platforms. Kia and Hyundai also had to settle a class action lawsuit for $200 million over the dangerously lax security in their cars. Skullbreaker Challenge. On February 14, 2020, 12-year-old Parker Smith was invited by his friends to film what seemed like a harmless jumping contest with them. He agreed and on camera jumped the highest he could, but instead of landing safely on his feet, he fell backward and fractured his right arm. He was rushed to the hospital immediately and fortunately made a full recovery over the following weeks. However, what seemed like a simple accident turned out to be part of a disturbing internet trend his 2 friends were attempting to recreate. The so-called Skullbreaker Challenge required 3 people to stand in a line and somehow convince the person in the middle to jump. As soon as they did, the 2 on the outside swept the legs of the one in the middle who was usually unaware of what was about to happen. This caused them to fall backward, usually on their head, which is where the trend got its name from. It started earlier that year after a video of 2 students from Spain doing it on their friend went viral on social media platforms like TikTok, prompting countless imitators to try and recreate its success. And, as you might imagine, the results were disastrous, with Parker being one of the lucky ones for walking away with just a fractured arm. Many others were knocked unconscious by the impact, suffered from severe concussions, and some even needed multiple stitches across their skull and face. The most devastating of these incidents happened on January 24, 2020 in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, when a group of 7th graders attempted the challenge in school. Unfortunately, the victim fell way too hard on their head, causing them to lose consciousness and have a seizure. He luckily survived the incident and eventually recovered without any permanent head trauma. However, his initial condition was bad enough that authorities arrested the other 2 13-year-old boys. They were charged with 3rd-degree aggravated assault and 3rd-degree endangering an injured victim since the harm they caused was mostly intentional. Now, I wasn't able to find any reports on whether the charges were dropped or not, but even if they were, being arrested for attempting a dangerous internet challenge goes to show just how dangerous it can be. TikTok also stepped in and banned all videos of this challenge on their platform. Unfortunately, once something is on the internet, it never truly goes away, as evident from 2 girls finding videos of the Skullbreaker Challenge, attempting it on one of their classmates, injuring them, and getting charged for it in November 2022, more than 2.5 years after the original fad ended. Fortunately, there haven't been many reports of kids getting injured because of this challenge ever since.